Welcome back to Real Life Answers. My name is Ben, and this is Jesus on Culture. Welcome to Jesus on Culture, where we take one of today's top cultural issues and discuss it in a series. This series involves two pastors, Dan Bannister, pastor of Grace Alive Church in Ontario, California, and Bob Bannister, pastor of First Baptist Church Springfield, Louisiana. We'll be discussing issues such as, should Christians be involved in social justice? Is racism a sin? What is white privilege? Does it actually exist? God bless you. Have a great day. And here is Jesus on Culture.
But I think the beauty of the way the Bible presents, I say it presents justice, but justice is so interwoven into the gospel itself that as we begin, that's actually what we're about to hit next, is justice. It's something that can't be overlooked, because if you believe in Jesus and you have had the blood of Jesus applied to your life and you have that relationship with him, you can't overlook justice, because Jesus took the justice that was supposed to be exacted on you, the judgment, and made it where you were a just person. He gave you his righteousness, that word for justice. He actually handed it to you so you could interact with God based on his life, not yours. And so you were given love and mercy when you should have received the punishment Jesus received, which means Jesus took the justice for your life so you could be just to others. But let's go ahead and hit that. The prophet Micah shares the Lord's words with us. We actually just quoted it a second ago, but let's just drive it home. He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? But to do justly, that's an action, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God, Micah 6:8. Recently on Facebook, a guy I know was accused of being uneducated because he endorsed Mississippi's recent flag change and removal of the Confederate symbol from it. Pastor Dan, what biblical reason is there for the state of Mississippi to remove the Confederate symbol?
Oh, wow. Okay, so you have to understand history to start with. And so and here's, guys, I grew up in the South. So I grew up with people telling me, oh, the Confederate flag just is a symbol of our heritage. It's just a symbol of being Southern, Southern pride. By the way, I do want to be careful about Southern pride in general, because the whole, that's honestly where my sin of partiality toward people of the North was built, is on this idea of Southern exceptionalism. You hear people talk today about American exceptionalism, which leads us to give partiality to
people from other countries,
American culture, and to somehow think that people of other cultures are inferior to our own. People of other nations are somehow sub to American culture and value, because somehow we tend to look at the American culture as God's culture. And that is a dangerous, dangerous thing to do. There is no biblical justification for that. So coming back to the Confederate flag, the issue with the Confederate flag, we've got to recognize, and this was hard for me, because like I said, I grew up thinking, hey, this is Southern pride. I wore the Confederate flag. I had it as a bandana, had it on a hat, had it on a shirt, had it. I liked the symbol. It made me feel proud to be from the South. And so the problem, though, is when you go back to the history of the Confederate flag, the Confederate flag, and what they're talking about when they call it the Confederate flag, is not even the Confederate national flag, the flag that was used for the nation that was being formed in the Confederacy during the Civil War. The flag that's flown is the Confederate battle flag. Now, you need to understand that what that means is there was a kind of flag that the Confederacy used as a representation of them nationally, and there was a kind of flag that they would use over their armies as a symbol of war that they were waging against the North. The Confederate flag is that flag. It is a symbol of war.
Actually symbolizing war itself. It's not even so much heritage as it's like we're never going to give up kind of thing towards the Union itself.
Absolutely. And the war was fought over, and if you go back into history, the war was fought over slavery. And I've heard all the arguments about it being fought for the states' rights and the states' rights to what? The states' rights to secede. Well, why did they want to secede?
Because you're trying to keep us from having slaves.
Exactly. It ultimately comes back to slavery. And so it doesn't matter how many times we circle the wagon, the Civil War was fought over slavery. And the Confederate flag, and this is where it gets really important to understand how it became to be used. The Confederate flag wasn't even something that just continued to be used after the war. Think about it. The North had just defeated the South. If they had seen the Confederate battle flag still flying over buildings and places, they would have assumed that that was a sign of hostility, a sign of aggression, a sign of war, because it would have been a raising of a flag against the North again. So there's no way that was continuing to be used. And history teaches us that the Confederate flag ceased to be used after the Civil War. Think about it. If we're gonna, not to add insult to injury, but the only flag that the South was allowed to fly at the end of the war was the white flag of surrender. So that is ultimately the only flag that the Confederacy was allowed to fly. Now, fast forward a few decades, and what you have is this move as we see the enacting of Jim Crow laws and things like that were intentionally put in place to oppress the African American people. Laws for segregation, laws that refuse to grant them access to public buildings and to relegate them to different parts of certain buildings, to force them to use different bathrooms, to force them to use different things that allowed discrimination, laws against that prohibited people of color from owning property in certain areas and things like that. All of those, it was during that time that there were people of the South who began to try to propagate this Southern pride and to use this Confederate flag as a symbol that would forward the cause of the South and was ultimately a symbol of oppression.
I want us to get to eventually. Go ahead and finish what you're going over, and then we'll try to hit these questions.
Sure. So ultimately the Confederate flag, you have to understand, becomes a symbol of oppression to the Black community. And
oppression,
it's been flown and continued to fly over the state of Mississippi. Now, here's the problem. You've got, I personally don't think that the Confederate flag should be flown by anyone who loves the Black community. But can you imagine being a Mississippian who is a person of color, who is living in that state and who is expected to salute this flag and expected to see this flag as a representation of them? This is nothing short of oppression. And so when we think about the question of, is there a biblical reason for the state of Mississippi to remove the Confederate symbol? How about love your neighbor? How about
love your neighbor as yourself? Would you want something of your past that was absolutely horrible, constantly brought up to you every day just by looking at something? And I think that's a question that we all have to ask ourselves is, are we loving our Black brothers and sisters as we love ourselves? And I think a resounding no happens quite often because, again, even in my own life, I was thinking they were experiencing the same America that I was, and I was force-feeding that and regurgitating some of the things from my political aisle side that I believe must have been correct. And instead of looking into it and finding out the truth, I continued to perpetuate the lies that were hurting my brothers and sisters.
So, what did you think? Is there anything you'd like to add to what was said today? If so, please let us know in the comments below. Also, if you like what you saw today, please hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss an episode. Finally, please join us every Monday at 4 p.m. for new issues regarding our culture.